let's start with the Orlando Magic. Mark has gotten his Georgetown rant out of his system already. So let's go to the team that I enjoy watching most. We're slapping the bag 2023 here. As you guys remember, Robbie Calland in the win-loss over-unders to start the season. We proclaimed this is the year where Slap the Bag 2023 would be in effect for Franz Wagner. And Franz Wagner has been incredible.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I just had to make sure. I mean, we're separated a little bit in age, so I had to make sure. But oh wow, now I'm thinking about the last bag slap that I did, and I don't want to think about that. Continue.
By the way, is that that's definitely not just like a Midwest thing, right? Like
it might just
obviously
be that was very much a thing at Michigan State University.
Yeah. Definitely think at Ohio State.
First and only bag slap I ever did was room temp. Don't do that. Terrible. It was one of the worst nights of my life. So
oh my goodness. But we're going to talk about the Magic and like just the really, really fun team that they have. So I'll let you start before I jump in because I just kind of have a lot. Like I'm just gonna spray like wide. I feel like with the Magic because I love so many disparate pieces on this team. I don't know if they have like a central cohesive theme yet beyond just being really fun and having a lot of really fun players. I will note one thing that noted Orlando Magic friend of the program and fan, Steve Cerruti, producer of the Ryan Russillo show, he sent me that I think is really, really interesting. But before we get there, Mark, what have been your overall impressions of the Orlando Magic thus far in the season?
Yeah, I mean, kind of what I expected. I should say over the last couple weeks, like when they get their guards back, they are a completely different team. Markelle Fultz was awesome yesterday against the Pacers. Like, I think the biggest theme for me, at least with the Magic, is their size. Like, their size is so hard for teams to deal with. In their win against Portland, I think it was 2 weeks ago, that was one of those games where they won not just because of their size, but the positional size that they have was a significant reason why they ended up winning that game. You look at the game that they had against Indiana last night, also played a significant part. Like, T.J. McConnell's a good guard defender, but when you have somebody like Markelle, who's 6'4", that is as shifty as he is, that can rise over anybody, 16 feet in. And he's just looked like he's had that shift back. Like, he's been really good for them. He's been really dynamic. The biggest frustration I think I have with this team is that it just never feels like Jalen Suggs is going to be healthy. I'm hoping that it seems like it's just going to be hopefully after this season they get to a point where he's healthy again, because he's always in and out of the lineup. The flashes are still good. You see good stuff from him. I mean, even like Cole Anthony has had some really good games of late. Like, again, it's just you have guys who can do something as guards compared to what it was earlier in the year. It's like, hey, we're able to put our guys in really good spots. And Franz Wagner's just been awesome. He's
so good.
He started the year, not even that it was bad. I still thought it was very good to start the year. Obviously, his splits were down. Like, he wasn't shooting as well from outside. A lot of that was not having guards who could really create everything and create any kind of spacing. But since like Christmas, he's been just on an absolute tear in terms of what he's putting up across the board. I mean, he's been, for my money, the best player on their team. Like, obviously, Paolo's done a lot of really great stuff. If I had to give somebody on the team an all-star nod, it would be Franz, because he's been that good. I mean, just this is since Christmas. So 13 games, 21 points, 4 boards, 4 assists, 53, 42, 79 splits. We'll get into the line quite a bit, taking 5 threes a game. Like, just been really damn good. I enjoy the hell out of this team. Exactly like you mentioned, like Jonathan Isaac is back now, which regardless of how you feel about his off-court stuff, like he just getting back and being healthy and seeing him get on court again is really cool from a standpoint of knowing that he went through 2.5 years of absolute hell, personal injury-wise, to get back. And he's looked solid. Like, I want to see more still. I think he just played his 3rd game last night. But again, there's just there's a lot going on here to feel positive about.
Yeah, like the fact that Jonathan Isaac was able to come in and be as impactful defensively with his length, with his movement skills, just that general, I think that like that goes even more than anything to show just how some guys are just like savants on defense, right?
Yeah.
Jonathan Isaac can sit out 2.5 years basically, and he still has that like anticipation that he's always had, right? Like, he still has, like, the timing is still coming back a little bit. You can see that, like, it's still not 100% there. But just like that sense of anticipation, like rotating around and like, finding those little passes, like he had that play against Jason Tatum where like, I can't remember if it's like off the top of my head, like a rip or like he just like kind of deflected like a lazy pass, like almost like right in Tatum's hands, and then just went and like started a transition opportunity. It's just like his length and his hands and that anticipation, like it's still just there. It's unbelievable. It's kind of staggering, but I'm glad that you started on Markelle Fultz because I think that that's the place where I want to start as much as anything. Markelle Fultz is a good point guard in the NBA. Like he is a legit starting caliber point guard in the NBA. I know it doesn't look like the way that people anticipated it looking like when he was the number 1 overall pick. He looked like a 3-level scorer who could make passing reads, who could do like a million different things on the court. But it looks pretty close now. Like he's not the superstar because the shooting isn't there. The 3-level scoring isn't there. He's really kind of resigned to that like 16 foot in range as a scorer. I know that he occasionally takes threes, but I still don't feel great about it coming out of his hand, but he's still impactful regardless. He has turned into a really, really good defender, which is something that if you watch him at Washington, like that never existed. And he's turned into a guy where his footwork has always been elite and his creativity with his footwork has always been unbelievable. But just the way he slithers and slides like through defenders and like slaloms around guys with like Euro steps and deceleration moves and things like that. It's kind of the closest thing in the league to watching Shea that isn't Shea. It feels like, like, do you know what I mean when I say like, he's obviously not
I
Shea,
get exactly
he's not
like
as good.
Yeah,
but like just the way that he maneuvers and slithers around the paint is kind of unbelievable to me.
Yeah. And actually some people will probably disagree with me on this. I mean, he's a better passer than Shea. Like that's
yeah.
I mean,
true,
yeah.
but...
I mean, Shea's that's not. I don't mean that, and that's not as like
Shea's a 30-point per game scorer. Like,
yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah,
but I mean, like
Shea's a way better player.
That's the difference for me. Like, you get a player who is doing really exciting things as a live dribble creator for them. Because even like part of what's fun about this team, and we haven't even mentioned him yet. Like, Wendell Carter hasn't necessarily taken like the leap. He's still been really damn good this year. And like when he's healthy, they are a different team. Like defensively, they hit differently because of what he brings at the 5 spot. Like his switchability has been awesome this year. I don't think the rim protection has been quite as good as it was last year, but I think part of that's been what their guard defense has been at times. Obviously, it's a 2-player game in pick and roll. But like in terms of screening and just opening things up, like what he does to create space for Markelle is awesome. Like I'll never forget when I talked to Wendell last year for a feature. Like actually one of the most fun things to do is to talk about screening with a good screener, because like we just talked about screening for like 15 minutes and what it was like learning Markelle's game and kind of figuring that out and getting that sense. And you really see that click this year. I think even when teams are, it's something that I think obviously when you're talking about playoffs it's different, but when you are able to screen and rescreen the way that some guys can in the league, for a guy like Markelle, who's not going to take those outside shots with consistency and get guarded like it, I mean, you can really create space still for them. And I think you're seeing that at a high level. So I've enjoyed it. Also, I feel like I just have so many things to say about this team. Since Gary Harris went back in the starting lineup, Magic are 6-5, and Gary Harris has been really good. It's been really solid. Like just a good guard defender, can run a little bit of secondary stuff and is hitting his shots at a high level. So that's, I mean, exactly. Like you just plug and play a regular rotation guard in and, oh, hey, Magic are pretty good. So obviously they still have a lot of the consistency things that a young team is going to struggle with, when right now the only 2 players in their top 9 who are older than 24 are Gary Harris and Terrence Ross. So it's like, yeah, I mean, you're gonna have some of those, but they've been dynamic, and I think it's fun because they're going to be the team that people are going to talk about and be like, oh, well, what if they just like we're really all in for Wemby this year, or what if they were able to go lower so they could get Scoot? And like for what it's worth, they're not going to finish high enough where I think I'm all that worried about them just like dropping out of the top 7 in the lottery or something. But like I think that the experience that they're getting this year is really valuable for what they're trying to do and being a team that I think is going to take the jump next year. Obviously what they get in this next draft, I think like they really need movement shooting, as we've talked about. Like, I think that's still the biggest glaring weakness on this team, is having somebody who can really be a movement shooter that opens up things offensively. But I mean, you really see them in some of these games start to find some stuff. And like Paolo, he went from a guy who, like, I know we differed on this a little bit. Like, I think I was pretty clear cut, like Paolo number one the entire way. And this is not saying what's right. Yeah, because I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but I think part of why I was is some of the passing stuff that we are seeing from him over the last month is like, the passing, the creation. Like, he had a late isolation. I'm trying to pull up which game it was. I want to say it was the Boston game. So in the Boston game, they just like flipped in the ball, late dribble creation. The things that he's doing with the ball in his hands have been just mesmerizing to watch. Like, he's so good. And I love this team. They're very fun.
Well, I love them. And, I'm glad that you brought up the guards, because I think as much as anything, like Markelle Fultz and Gary Harris getting back, it just kind of slides everyone down, right? Like, I think Cole Anthony, I know that Magic fans are super fucking frustrated with Cole Anthony right now. I think he's actually gotten like better this year. You see the way he plays at tempo a little bit more. He needs to shoot it at like a really, really high level, and that hasn't quite happened as much as we want to see yet. But I think that his mix of passing and like gunning for himself has really improved and helped in terms of like running the team and running like an actual concept that makes them better as opposed to making Cole better. Again, like, there are going to just be defensive liabilities, but that's why I always have liked him most as like a third guard, right? I think you're probably a little bit, underqualified to be a starting point guard in the NBA. And maybe Cole Anthony wants to be a starting point guard in the NBA. When you listen to him, like, I know that he went on a rant after one of their games, not in like a negative way against the coaching staff or anything. He just said, I'm a starter in this league. Like, that's how I feel about it. Like, I come in off the bench, but I'm good enough to be a starter. I don't know if I'm quite there necessarily, but I think he's good. Like, I think he's a really impactful, useful player in the NBA. And I don't think that necessarily you have to be a starter to be able to do that. Having Fultz around, I think Fultz is just better than he is, frankly. Like, I think Fultz gets his teammates involved at a really high level. I think that the defense is just way more impactful, and they kind of have, like, they don't have enough scoring out there, but I think the offense runs better when it's running through guys like Franz and Paulo as opposed to Cole when he's out there, and it still is like a little bit more geared toward like the Cole Anthony show than what you'd want. While he has still improved in that regard, and I want to like acknowledge the fact that he has really improved in that regard. But yeah, like this front court is just what's unbelievable about them, right? Like, Wendell Carter, Jonathan Isaac are like the third and fourth best guys. And on most other teams, when you have those young guys there, assuming that Isaac gets back to being a modicum of what he was previously, if those are your third and fourth guys, like most other teams, they'd be like the 1 and 2 like best prospects on the team, or like, best 24 and under guys on the team. I mean, goodness, like Franz and Paulo, I love the way that they can play off of one another. Like, it does frustrate me from time to time that it does seem like Franz, I don't want to say defers, because I think that would be the wrong word, but I think he kind of like slides. He is happy playing a role and being someone that moves the ball around the court, makes the right read, processes the game super well. I wish he would be a little bit more aggressive some games. Like, there are games like against New Orleans. What was that? I think it was last weekend, where he was just like unbelievable. The first half against the Pelicans was one of the best halves I've seen anyone play, 23 and under in the NBA this year. He had like 29 points or something. He was passing, he was playmaking, like he was decision making at a super high level. He was knocking down threes. He was finishing at the rim. Like, his finishing has gone super underrated this year, I think, as a skill set. He's just really good. Like, I'm honestly at the point now where if you wanted to say that you trust Franz more than Paulo to become like the Orlando Magic star, I think I still believe in Paulo's upside a little bit more, just in terms of the handle and the shake and the creation. But goodness, Franz has made that a conversation, which is kind of terrifying for the rest of the league, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I think, but I mean, for me, if I, again, like I said earlier, if I had to give the All-Star nod to somebody, it would be Franz off this team. Yeah. And I think, like, again, like just looking at also this year, like, no, I don't think anybody from Orlando deserves it just based on what this year has been. But I think there should be like legitimate, like, think if the Magic like go on some like random winning streak before All-Star voting is done, which it is already just about done. Like, I think you can make the case. But yeah, it's exactly.
But by the way, I'm just terrified to do. I think at some point next week I'm gonna have to do like all-star like picks and reserves and everything. And I'm just terrified. Because no, it is guaranteed this year to make somebody angry. The Eastern Conference forward picture is such a shit show. Mm-hmm. Like, you basically have to pick between Julius Randle and Bam Adebayo, is what it comes down to. Like, that you have to make a choice between one of those two guys. And that sucks because they are both unequivocally like all-star caliber players.
I can already tell you right now, I hear Heat fans typing saying like, you dumb motherfucker, how do you not have Bam first? But like, Julius has been really good this year. Like, I think I would lean Bam, but like, exactly. Like, I mean,
I think I would too. Yeah.
But easier said than done to just like fully put my thumb on it, especially too if you look like just January splits. Like, I mean, come on, Julius has been awesome. But then again, like, did you watch, what was the Heat game? I think it was the game against Boston. The Heat
I was gonna say I watched that.
Oh my God, Bam was so good.
We're gonna talk about that game later on when we do Defensive Player of the Year top fives.
Cool,
because Bam was really good. Sneaky, by the way, Haywood Highsmith was awesome in that game.
Yes, he was. He was guarding.
He was so good. Shout out Haywood Highsmith. Like, had to defend Jason Tatum for like long swaths of time and did pretty well on him. Okay. So here's my thing with the Magic. I've seen a few people in the YouTube comments ask, how should they approach the deadline? I mean, I have an idea that I think Magic fans are like not going to love. I think that they should look. I think they should look to move Mo Bamba probably, just because. Look, he's out of the rotation. They're playing Mo Wagner ahead of him. Jonathan Isaac's back. It's hard to find minutes for Mo. I also sneaky think that this is the time to cash in on Bol. And I would be interested to see I would be gauging what his value is on the market at the very least. If the market is not as high as what I think it could be, like, I wonder if they could get a late first round pick for him. I would want to know that. And if I could get a late first round pick for Bol, I would. Here's the reason why. Year and a half left on his deal. This Magic front court, I just don't know where the true minutes come from for Bol, right? If everybody is healthy. Like, you have Wendell Carter at center, who can also play the 4. You have Franz Wagner, who can play basically anywhere 2 through 4. You have Paulo Banchero, who like plays as like a point, like offense initiator, where also he's playing at like the 4, and the 4 is probably his best position. You have Jonathan Isaac as well, who is going to come in and like kind of demand minutes. Jonathan Isaac is really good. And obviously you have this case that, Jonathan Isaac is, they have like this weird contract with him that has kicked in with the injuries, where I think he's non-guaranteed next year, or at least like minimally guaranteed. Like, they could get out of the contract, I think, at like $7.5 million or something like that. Based on what we've seen, I probably wouldn't do that. But if he's playing, and I would assume he's playing, there's no room really for Bol in that case. And if there's no room for Bol, you're just going to kind of see his value like kind of diminish. And I wonder if there's real space to actually move him in a deal that like makes sense for them. And here's the other thing. I really have enjoyed Bol. I think it's been great to see him become like a real genuine NBA player. And he has become a real genuine NBA rotation player. He's a really bad defender, to the point where like, I wonder how valuable he is like long-term in the NBA. He could improve in that respect, but his lateral quickness, his instincts, they just really are not up to snuff on that end. And it's been fun. It's been really cool to watch. He's been productive. His game is novel in some ways. Like it's different than Victor. It's different than Chet. Like he can handle the ball a little bit more. But I just wonder if on like a winning team, what does this look like? He doesn't really rebound well enough. Doesn't move his feet well enough in space. Like I wonder what the role is that makes sense. And I don't know what to do with that right now.
Well, it's hard because I think part of what made him, and not even that, I mean, he hasn't been good lately. He hasn't really been in the rotation as much either. But like, I think what is difficult is that a lot of what made him exciting and impactful early on in the year is how much they leaned into him. Like they really just said, okay, we're going to let you rip and run in transition. We're going to play pretty strictly zone because we have no guards. So we need to play big and try and mess things up that way. And they really empowered him to do things. And I think like, that was good for what he was doing as a player and for his development, but also like I think he's just like he's just in an odd spot in what he brings impact wise because like we talked about this, he really only has it as like a either shooting above the break or as a pull-up shooter because the shot release is still really slow, especially if you like station him in the corners or something. Like almost all of the shots that have been blocked have been on corner threes this year. Like the passing is still just like, for the most part, like there are every now and again you get one of the occasional like, whoa, how did that happen?
Yeah.
But then you also get the whoa, how did that happen? Like yesterday, I tweeted this out, and you know me, I like rarely tweet anything negative about a player, but I think that was the worst pass I'd seen this year. And like that's part of the Bull experience. So on one hand, like I would hate to see him get traded just because it finally feels like he had found a spot and like things are working. And, but exactly like you mentioned, like it's okay. Well, what does this look like moving forward when he doesn't really have quite the same role anymore? And it's an odd spot. I'm just happy that he's gotten to even find himself at all this year. But
me too. But I think there's a reasonable chance that the Magic could convince a team like you have 1.5 years left of Bull at a like low level price at the deadline where finances are often very like tight, especially for teams that are over the cap into the luxury tax. Like I wonder if there's a space where for the Magic, they could have a wider bidding war than what people think and hopefully be able to like, get a little bit more on him than what is worthwhile, maybe is the way to put it. Because if I was a contending team, like I don't know how much I would trust Bull necessarily, but like, would you rather acquire Bull or Serge Ibaka right now on the market? Right? Like, I would rather take the flyer on Bull at the very least, like knowing that maybe it works out reasonably well.
Yeah, I think I would probably just pass on either if I'm trying to win games right now. But I don't mean that to be unfair. I just like I've like with the whole Surge thing, I was just like I feel bad that it hasn't worked for him in Milwaukee, but if it's not going to work there where they clearly targeted him to try and bring in somebody who was going to fill that void that they were missing and it hasn't worked, I just don't see where it's going to work.
Underrated. Milwaukee might be interesting for Bull.
Maybe. I do think Bud's going to
just like cool. As a flyer to see what it looks like.
I if you don't play defense, we've seen the Jordan Noir experience in Milwaukee, and I just struggle to think that Bud would be super in love with playing Bull minutes.
You're right. But, that was a bad take on my part.
No, you're good. I just like exactly like trying to think through that stuff. I'm like, I have no idea what to think.
What have you thought of? Let's finish here. What have you thought of Paulo over the last month? He's been interesting. I think there's been some inefficiency that has continued to crop up, but he's still a foul magnet. Still dishing out really, really high level passes, as you mentioned earlier in the show. Probably has dropped off a little bit from, the start of the season. Now that people have tape on him, have played against him once or twice, maybe know a little bit more about how to attack him. What have been your overall thoughts so far?
Yeah. The shot still has never quite come around from outside for him. Like he's had stretches where it's looked better. I think it's still it's been about what I expected this year. I didn't think he was going to step in and be like a 35% plus 3-point shooter on volume. I just appreciate that there's no hesitancy. Like, that's my biggest thing with him. I think hesitancy in any capacity would totally cap his ceiling. So I've appreciated there hasn't been any there. I think teams have been a little bit better at matching up with his physicality. More so, like, they're still, I mean, he's still getting the line 7.5 times a game since Christmas. But, like, I think teams have been better at impacting the shot around the rim and trying to, wall off some of his drives, trying to meet him later instead of being actually meeting him out farther and giving him more of those driving lanes. So I think that there's been some of that, but to his credit too, like we mentioned, I think the passing has like just popped even that much more for me. Like, he's just in such control of his game right now and finding himself in the half court as a playmaker, and like showing himself as like the pretty clear number one guy on the team. I've felt good about that, but yeah, I think he's going through as small of a rookie wall comparatively as I think he can. So I've enjoyed him a lot, though.
Yeah, no, I've enjoyed watching him play. I've really, really enjoyed watching the Magic. The thing that I wanted to mention that Cerruti told me is over the last little while here, and I'll pull up this metric that he sent me. I think he got it from like some Instagram account. Over the last, actually, no, it's just like straight up since starting on January 19th. Sorry, I was pulling up this number here. The best 5-man lineups in the NBA. The best one is the Denver Nuggets, with their starting lineup, essentially. I think it's actually minus Jamal Murray and with Bruce Brown. The second best 5-man lineup in the NBA so far this season. Markelle Fultz, Gary Harris, Franz Wagner, Paulo Banchero, Wendell Carter, plus 23.2 about a month ago. About a week ago, I'm sorry, when this number was taken. I think that goes to show like how much upside this team really has now that they have their guards back. They're outperforming teams at a really, really high level. And oh, by the way, since like this metric, got sent this metric, they've gone out, they've beaten Indiana, they've gone out, they beat Boston in a game, right? Like, I don't know. I'm just extremely excited and in on this entire group of guys. Like, I think that this is the team to watch moving forward, kind of across the NBA, is like a team that could really skyrocket. But moreover, I'm really interested to see how they transition this with the draft picks they have this year. Like, they're currently slated for number 5 and number 8 in the NBA draft because this is the year where the Chicago Bulls pick for Nikola Vucevic transfers. The just gift that keeps on giving for the Orlando Magic at this point. They have a chance in this draft particularly to like really, really solidify their core. Like, this is a team that you've mentioned could use just a little bit more outside shooting, right? Can you imagine them getting like Brandon Miller and Grady Dick on this roster? Or like, God forbid, if they get Scoot Henderson on this roster? Like, are you kidding me? This Magic team has a chance to be like terrifyingly good, depending on how the lottery shakes out for them moving forward.
Yeah, I think what I'm most interested to see, and not that I've heard anything on this, but just based on the way that Orlando has approached this, the way that they've talked about approaching this window, I'm curious to see if they, not even that it's pushing all their chips in because they have a lot to work with, but if they get kind of aggressive in saying, hey, if there's somebody who is like 27, 28 that has a decent amount of time left on their contract, that if that situation ends up being right for us, like, I could see them being willing to make a move that brings them in like a higher level guard, or somebody that rounds them out more as they try and turn the corner a little bit more next year. Not that they're going into title contention or anything, but they are hitting an interesting point where it's almost like they do kind of have to start getting a veteran presence in, because like we've seen with some teams, like you can have this plethora of awesome young players, but at the same time, you have to really find that balance of having a lot of guys you want to develop while also having guys who help maximize them. And I think, again, they're part of having everybody healthy again has helped them find that. But even headed into the trade deadline, like we just talked about, I think that there's some stuff to shift around and figure out there. Like, clearly Mo hasn't been happy in his role. I think he definitely wants to, not that he, I think they wanted things to work out in Orlando. It just hasn't.
Well, and look, like, I hope that Mo Bamba gets traded, to be honest. Like, I just
Yeah.
really want to see him in a different location at this point. I think he has some real upside. I think he has some real potential as a rim protector that can step out and shoot threes off the catch, maybe in some pick and pops. Like Boston, I think would be really interesting as a spot for Mo. I know that they're kind of looking for depth at the center position at the very least, given the way that they play. I think that Phoenix would be kind of interesting. I know that Jock Lawndale has had some really good moments, especially earlier in the year as a center. I think that, if you could do something like Jay Crowder for Mo Bamba, that seems like somewhat interesting to me. I know I saw a report that Phoenix is looking for like 2 out of 3 of a good rotation
Yeah,
player,
that
a
was
first round
ridiculous.
pick, or like a young player. And I was like, are you crazy?
Not happening.
Like,
No way.
yeah,
No.
that's you can ask for that, but when the deadline comes, if you stay to that price, Jay Crowder is still going to be a Phoenix Sun.
Exactly.
I
So
mean,
yeah. No. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm just interested to see what happens because it's not even now at the trade deadline. I think that's something I'm interested to see how they approach this and towards the off season.
yeah.
But yeah, this is a team to be really excited about.